Thank you very much, and as always, thanks to everyone taking the time out coming to attend. Apologies and thanks as well for the slight confusion about the venue. I know we had problems in the chamber and they were fixed this morning, and I think we've taken the appropriate gamble to try and do it in person. Always think you get a better nuance about the tenor of conversations when you're in the same room rather than online. Just a personal opinion. So thanks very much for putting up with any confusion that might have caused. And as always, Magda's right. If officially we can use the chat function for anybody that's online. For people in person, given that it's a relatively small meeting, I'm also happy if you just kind of wave if that's easier as well. So thank you very much again, and we will just get on with the agenda. The first item of which is welcome and apologies and substitutes. Danny, please, or apologies if that's appropriate.
Yes, thanks, convener. We've no apologies or substitutes today, so a full house.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is always declarations of interest. And there'll be none of those, I don't think. So we will go on to item 3, which is the minute of meeting of the Executive Subcommittee, blah, 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 for the last meeting. Can we agree those minutes, please? Thank you very much. And paper number 4 is the Education Reform in Scotland paper. And I think Sharon's going to introduce that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. This report is a late report to committee as a result of an amendment which was agreed at the Learning and Families Committee on Wednesday the 3rd of May. Excuse me. Following the presentation of the Education Reform in Scotland update report to that committee, it was agreed that a further report be presented to this committee, providing details of the responses to all of the consultations which have taken place to date, and to provide elected members the opportunity to make comment on the Phase 3 consultation so that it may be submitted on behalf of elected members as a late submission if they wish to do so. Detailed within this report then are the responses provided by school leaders and education officers for all of the consultations that have taken place on education reform to date. This includes a session with PKC head teachers on their views on the national discussion, which seeks to gather views on the purpose and the future of education curriculum in Scotland nationally. This is detailed in Appendix A of this report. This consultation took place between September and December of 2022, and it invited responses from individuals and organisations across the country, and invited young people, practitioners all across the country to provide submissions in a variety of ways. So they had more than 5,600 survey responses, over 200 group responses, and over 26,000 pupils and students attended online assemblies. More than 80 people attended a series of online public events for the national discussion consultation. So section 5.2 of this report details the next steps for this part of the education reform, which is that a call to action paper will be published in the spring of 2023. Section 5.3 of the report details the 3 parts of the Hayward Review consultation process. This consultation deals with the review of the future of qualifications and assessment in the senior phase. The document contained in Appendix E sets out in some detail the 3 phases of the consultation process, and Appendices B, C and D detail the responses submitted by school leaders and education officers on each of these consultations. These were arrived at during focused discussions with head teachers, collated by education officers and approved before submission by head teacher business meetings and ECS SMT. The final report by Professor Hayward will be presented to the Scottish Government at the end of May. And so elected members are invited to make comment on the amendments of Phase 3 of this consultation, which education officers can send to the Scottish Government as a late submission if committee wishes. David McCluskey, Service Manager for Secondary Education, and myself are happy to answer any questions on the Hayward Review responses, and all of the education officers for the national discussion. Thank you, convener.
Thanks very much, Sharon. I will invite questions. I'd be keen not to try and replicate questions that we had at Learning and Families on the broader discussion, but if there are any comments on the phase 3 approach, that would be appreciated, or questions on it. Thank you. So any questions from members, please? Councillor Kigali.
I think I want to just, as somebody that's very new to all of this, why was it not normal practice that this would come to the members for the actual consultation bit, rather than us commenting on the responses that are already here? These aren't our responses, as I understand it, that will get submitted. This is our opportunity as 4 people, essentially, and you guys, to comment on something that officers have written, rather than us responding.
I think I'm probably quite happy to that. I think it was a discussion that we had as an administration with senior officers, given that it was a professional discussion. It was our view, it was my view, that this would be done by officers and not necessarily elected members. In hindsight, it would probably have been courteous to have an informal session with elected members to discuss that, but that frankly comes down to my decision making. And I apologise for that if that's been discourteous, but that's where we are, to be frank about it.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, and I hope moving forward, this can be. Look, I know you've been doing it for a year, but this is a long journey, as I'm sure it is for everybody. So in the future, as we move forward, if we could actually get the democratic part of it in, rather than it just being administration focused, that would be massively appreciated by everybody, I think. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Lessons learnt about it. The only caveat that I would add in our defence is that there's been informal opportunities for everybody to comment on it, and I think there will be going forward in the different phases as well. But yeah, noted and point taken. Councillor Shires, you have a question, please.
Thank you, convener. I'll leave my camera off because my internet is not proving to be very reliable. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
The true answer is you're quite loud, and I mean that literally rather than metaphorically. But carry on, Councillor Shires.
Well, now I'm paranoid. It's really loud. Okay. I had a couple of questions. In general terms, agree with most of the content that officers have put forward in this paper. I had a few issues, and they are things that have been raised with me by parents as well. How, on the issue of coursework, given that we now operate in a world where we have chat bots and all things that I don't even understand, but I'm sure young people do, how can we be confident that the coursework element of a lot of this would have the necessary validity, but with the authorship of it, etc. And I suppose the bigger issue around all of this is about workload for staff. If there's increased moderation of work that has to be carried out, etc. How we hear already about how under pressure staff are. So it looks to me like a lot of this would put even further pressure on an overstretched workforce.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. David McCluskey, please.
Yes, I think it's probably important to remember that coursework element's an important part of our existing qualifications and assessment framework. So we tend to shorthand it by talking about examinations, but visiting assessors, coursework, practical work, all of these things are part of where we are at the moment. But obviously, Councillor, you're quite right, that validity, if you like, and safeguarding round about the validity of coursework is very, very important, and it's something that SQA together with our schools place a lot of effort and emphasis upon. So I think as this evolves, that emphasis will continue, and obviously we continue to respond to the world in which we live, which provides new challenges round about that area as we go. So I think that it's not something that's new to us, and it's something that we're kind of well equipped for looking forward. And I think the second question about teacher workload is a fair question as well, and it's certainly something which Professor Hayward is firmly focused on as well. I think it's very important for us that this potential reform actually has deep roots and bites and is successful, and for that it has to be done in a manageable way moving ahead. So a lot of what is in the proposal is building upon practice that's there already rather than being brand new existing practice moving ahead, although it will be a major challenge for the entire system moving on for sure.
Thank you, David. Sharon, I think you want to add something to that. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Just in relation to your question, Councillor Shires, about the validity of the quality assurance framework within Perth and Kinross, when we didn't have exams during lockdown and we were using an alternative model of certification, we were very pleased that the model that was put in place by PKC head teachers was very robust, and in fact we did actually say to our staff that, you know, some of our students might have done better if they'd sat the exam, because the quality assurance was extremely robust, which meant that the following year we were very confident in the process that we went through, and we know that our teachers in Perth and Kinross take that very seriously, and there was no opportunity at all for those results that were not absolutely meeting the standard to go through our teachers, and we've got very good evidence of that from the alternative model of certification. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Do you have another question, Caroline? Don't know why I thought that. Is that
I did. I haven't even. Oh yeah, I'm loud again. I haven't even typed it into the chat yet. I don't know.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go to Councillor Cuthbert first, and then Councillor Kigali,
Okay.
and then you again, Caroline, if that's okay. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I'm brand new to this committee, brand new to the Learning and Families Committee as well, so I'm coming in completely blind, if you like. In terms of the comments, I can't really comment on what people have said because that's what they've said. But I'm wondering, there was a review, or there was a Scottish Government review of children and how they felt safe and all the rest of it. Has that been built into this, what we're now saying? Because one of the things I think that came through on that was the bullying seems to be a big issue for children. And I'm wondering whether that should be part of what we should be commenting on to the Scottish Government, to say that there should be training on bullying or something that should be incorporated into the curriculum. And I don't know if that's in there.
Well, that's a fair question, Councillor Cuthbert. David McCluskey again, please.
The Hayward review's a very tight review, really focused upon assessment and qualifications. So, you know, we're asked to respond to a set of fairly tight questions, which we've done. And in this particular review, that wouldn't come in the scope of it.
Thank you. It is something that I think we're all, as professionals and as politicians, it's something we're all aware of. It's a difficult nut to crack, but that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't try it. And I think it's reflecting of society in broader terms as well. But just because it's not in the scope of this discussion doesn't mean to say it won't be in the scope of many other discussions, if that's any consolation. Councillor Kigali.
Yes, I hope I'm only quibbling over wording here, but I just wanted some clarification in the phase 3 section on question 4. Something that jumped out to me in the third sentence, and it talks about the benefit to affluent learners potentially being an issue, and I understand that in the context of trying to close the gap between, you know, those more affluent people and those who aren't, and that is a focus, but it almost puts the benefit as a negative, and I just wanted reassurance that we've not got a policy here where we're trying to bring people down in order to close the gap, and we are trying to bring everyone up, and the focus needs to be on, you know, getting rid of the disadvantage rather than saying that the advantage itself is bad. That might just be a language thing that I'm, you know, just slightly uncomfortable with, but just wanted reassurance that's the case.
Thank you, Councillor Kigali. I'll come to Sharon in a minute, but I think, but I know from our point of view, again, as politicians, if you like, there's no point in closing the gap if it brings the people at the top down. Clearly, that's no use. And I think in terms of curriculum for excellence, although closing the poverty-related attainment gap is really important, it also does speak about, and we do forget about this sometimes, it does speak about excellence as well, which is just as important. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of the wording, David, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Kigali. The wording's not meant to imply any race to the bottom in any way, shape or form. It's our mission to close the poverty-related attainment gap in the most positive way, while improving the world of excellence as well for all young people in Perth and Kinross. So we can look again at that, but that is absolutely not the implication of that language.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor Kigali. Councillor Shires, please.
Thank you. I want to go back to question 2 of the paper, and it talks about and Sharon alluded to this, about the experience during COVID. I guess that was a particular period in time, and I just wonder if we're taking into consideration the kind of motivation and behaviour of young people if they don't have that academic calendar in the sort of later stages of high school, where they're focused in on, you know, sort of every year sort of exams around the May period, and whether just how it's envisaged that would actually roll out in a non-COVID period when young people are actually in a school building.
Sharon, please.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. I suppose the proposals set out in phase 3 are looking at still continuing with exams, and that's already been decided before the final report is presented to the Scottish Government, that there will always be an exam process. What it's looking to do is to try and ensure engagement across and throughout the year, and also to give due weight to other aspects of the skills and attributes that we're fitting our young people for. So David McCluskey can talk a wee bit about what the added benefits, I suppose, and the added work for young people will be across the year, and not just an exam period, but just to assure that the exam process will still be part of this new qualifications and assessment framework.
Thank you, Sharon. If there are no more questions, I'm just going to formally move the paper for an amendment from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for, we appreciate that your acceptance that elected members should have been involved earlier in this process. Just looking at the report, I'd like to propose that we amend the recommendation simply to note the responses provided, and I'm very grateful to officers for pulling all this together for us. Thank you all very much. But given that this closed on the 7th of April, the final report is due in 2 weeks' time. Sending in a late submission at this stage, I would suggest, is not really going to achieve anything. So I'd like to propose an amendment that we simply note the responses and that we don't submit this as a late submission.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Yeah, well, but given that, we'll accept that we don't send any late response. Thank you. So given that we're not now going to submit any late response, are we all agreed to that? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to paper 5, which again is going to be introduced by Sharon Johnson.
Thank you, Convener. This report, the summary report on Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspections, provides an overview of the performance of Education and Children's Services inspected and reported over the past year by the Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland since the previous report of this type in 2022. This report has also been to Scrutiny Committee prior to this committee convener, you'll be aware. Section 4 of the report provides the background detail of both Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspection frameworks, and also provides some detail of the local authority quality improvement frameworks carried out by officers in ECS. This supports schools and settings to ensure that continuous improvement takes place beyond the formal inspection process. Section 5 of the report provides an overview of Care Inspectorate inspections of ELC settings, along with benchmarking data from both our comparator authorities and the national average. Details of the inspections by the Care Inspectorate of Services for Children, Young People and Families that have been inspected within the last year are also included in this report under section 5.2. This includes the inspections of the Council's fostering service, our adoption service and the adult placement service. An overview of the ELC in schools inspected within the year by Education Scotland is also provided in section 5.3. Additional benchmarking information with comparator authorities is also provided where possible. There are a range of appendices to this report which gives members a summary of performance from Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspections over time, and also relative to our comparator authorities and national averages since 2016, since a new model for inspection took place. So overall, this report provides assurance of good performance across services with a clear focus on improvement. So myself and Hazel Robertson, the Head of Services for Children, Young People and Families, are here to answer any questions members might have on this report. Hazel's also accompanied online by some team leaders from the services for whose inspection reports are presented today, and education officers are also here in person to respond to any questions. James Childs from the performance team is also here to answer any questions on the analysis of the data presented. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Sharon. Questions, please. If we have no questions, Councillor Cuthbert, thought we might get away with that there just for a second.
No chance. Yes, my question relates to pages 27 and 31. It's table D3 and the secondary schools information. I note that in this, the performance is nothing like as good as the primary sector, if you like, and the chart that's held on page 31 appears to be in a different format, so that the formats of the other charts have the sort of very good or better. But I note that on secondary schools, none of the indicators were very good, or excellent. So I'm just wondering, do we have a problem? Is there something being done about this, or what's happening?
I did think we had goods and very goods, but Sharon, please.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Cuthbert, there is an issue in that we've only had 2 secondary school inspections in Perth and Kinross since 2016, and so therefore it's been very difficult to provide some comparator analysis given that time. The data that you have on the secondary school performance in page 31 is actually a new one, which was just new for this report. But what it doesn't give us is enough, and James Childs might want to say something about this, it doesn't give us enough data to give us much more than the 5 schools that have been reported and inspected on since 2016 against the 2 secondary schools within Perth and Kinross. But James may wish to comment further on that.
Thank you, Sharon. James?
Yes, I'm happy to add to that, really just to say, as Sharon said, because we've had so few inspections, it really isn't possible to provide a useful comparison. There simply isn't enough data to provide any analysis. So the information we've provided really is just a summary of what data we have available. But we're hoping in the next, certainly over the next year, possibly the next 2 years, we will have additional secondary inspections, and that will allow us to really provide some useful analysis that can then be used to give a kind of comparison going forward.
Thanks, James. Councillor Cuthbert.
I've put a thing in the chat for a second. It's really supplementary, but my understanding is that we do our own internal inspections of schools, and there's 2 parts. Do the figures that were given in the external inspections match up with our own internal inspections? And would it be possible for this committee or a wider body to be circulated with the figures for all the secondary schools, so we get a feeling of, are these isolated, or are we all performing at just satisfactory and not at the higher level?
I think I think the internal work that we do is slightly different. I know that the week that we had for Perth Grammar, for example, I think a lot of the issues that were brought out in that HMI, and by the very definition of the way we do things, a lot of these things have been addressed, and indeed we now have a clean bill of health. So to some degree, I think we're discussing things which have become outdated, but I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that.
Thank you, convener. Inspections are done by the inspection HMI. We don't do inspections, but we certainly do a quality assurance framework, and schools evaluate against their own data, and we don't send this to committee. It's publicly available, but every school has a quality assurance framework with quality improvement officers, but it's not inspection and we don't evaluate in that way.
Mr. Cuthbert.
Yes, it's really the second part of that question. Is it possible for us to get circulated with that data? I mean, basically, this indicates to me that we're not achieving well in secondary schools. So I'm just saying, is it a bigger problem? I'm looking for some reassurance, and that's, as councillor, I have responsibility to parents.
No, thank you. I mean, I think any information that committee wants, I'm sure we'll do our best to supply any member of the committee with that. I do think I go back to the original premise of the answer, if that's the right English to use, that because we've only had 2 schools inspected, it's maybe a false picture. I think I'm satisfied in the broadest of terms that we do deliver education pretty well in Perth and Kinross, including the secondary sector. That's not to say that we shouldn't address problems where they undoubtedly exist, but yeah, I think it's a moving picture. But any information in terms of quality assurance of our secondary schools, if there's information there, we'd be delighted to supply it.
I don't have a doubt about the quality. It's just I would like some reassurance given these statistics, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbert. I've got a comment from Councillor Shaz. Sorry, Councillor Shaz, you're right. I didn't invite comments on the last paper, on paper 4, so I'm happy to take them now if that's appropriate.
It's fine, given that we've moved on, convener. I think my comments are in the chat, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. I just wanted to record my dissent that I don't think that the way that this has been handled has been appropriate. It's such an important area for young people. We're talking about, you know, standards in school and the educational experience that our young people and children get, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Shaz. Thank you. If there are no more questions on paper 5, I will formally move it for noting and ask Councillor Frampton to second it, please.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Frampton. Comments first from Councillor Barrett, please.
Thank you, convener. I'd just like to thank Paul Davidson and everyone involved in these reassuring reports that highlight our consistent outperformance against comparator local authorities and the rest of Scotland. I also welcome the action that's being taken to provide support to the settings that are receiving less than good and to address areas of improvement with them. And I'd just like to highlight the 100% score for wellbeing, equality and inclusion at our inspected primary schools, which I think is very impressive. Thank you.
Here, Councillor Barrett. Thank you. Councillor Shires with a comment, please.
I was going to echo Liz's comment, Councillor Barrett's comment there, and I think it is credit to the staff who support our schools and settings across Perth and Kinross, and we really are very grateful for all they do.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Well said. If there are no more comments, can we agree the paper? Thank you. And we'll move on to paper 6, and again, Sharon to introduce, please.
Thank you, convener. This report is the standard and quality in schools, learning, communities and preschool sectors and daycare of children report. And this report provides the key findings of the inspection reports which have been published by both Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate since this committee met in March. Section 5 of the report sets out that one primary school and nursery, St Ninian's Episcopal School, was inspected in December 2022 and the report was published in February 2022. I would like to apologise for the error contained in 5.11 of the report, which gives the date of publication instead of the date of inspection. and incorrectly states that there will be no further visits by Education Scotland to the school, as there will indeed be a follow-up visit next year. Sarah Cowmeadow, the current head teacher of St Ninians, is present today to provide committee with an update on progress since the inspection took place. It should be noted that Mrs Cowmeadow took up post after the inspection took place and was not the head teacher at the time of inspection. But I will pass to Jill Dugan, Service Manager for Primary Schools, to introduce the report.
Thank you. Yes, as Sharon said, St Ninians Episcopal Primary School was inspected in December 2022. The then head teacher had already retired in the previous August, and while Sarah had been appointed in the June, she was not due to take up post until the January 2023, just in advance of publication of the report. At the time of the inspection, the principal teacher was in post as acting head teacher, and Sarah was not available until the January, but did have some days in school prior to taking up post in December. So Gillian Knox is here and Sarah is here to take you through progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was a short model inspection looking at learning, teaching and assessment in the school and nursery, and also raising attainment and achievement across the school and securing children's progress in the nursery class. In primary, learning, teaching and assessment achieved a satisfactory grade, raising attainment and achievement also satisfactory. In the nursery, learning, teaching and assessment was satisfactory, with securing children's progress receiving a grade of weak. So Sarah will now take you through the progress across all of the work of the school since she took up post.
Thank you very much and welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the three areas that the school, nursery and education authority have continued to work on are supporting all children to make progress in their learning through improved approaches to planning, assessment and moderation, continuing to develop approaches to tracking and monitoring progress through observations, assessment data and other key information to help raise attainment and achievement for all learners. And finally, ensuring that the nursery team benefit from strong leadership and direction to ensure continuous improvement. Working closely with the staff team, we have built professional learning sessions directly focused on the development of a consistent approach to planning and the planning cycle. Staff now plan over the short, medium and long term using the Perth and Kinross progression pathways alongside the Curriculum for Excellence experiences and outcomes. Termly plans are now shared with pupils and parents to highlight and clarify intended learning. And currently parents have really warmly received that information. They've already commented on their improved knowledge of the curriculum of what their children are receiving at St Ninians, which is great. Additionally, we have developed a 3-yearly cycle to deliver our curriculum to ensure a breadth of experience and outcomes across all stages. At transition points, teachers will share learners' progress through the curriculum, which will inform future planning to ensure progression and depth of learning. This will further develop a shared understanding of what children's progress looks like within and across Curriculum for Excellence levels. With a focus particularly on writing this term and last, we've engaged with the Child and Young Persons Improvement Collaborative Writing Programme, which has already had a positive impact on attainment and learner engagement in writing. We've introduced a robust calendar of quality assurance measures, including termly planning meetings with myself, regular classroom visits, learning walks, pupil focus groups and moderation of evidence of learning. This has allowed staff to receive timely feedback and has allowed me to regularly review and plan for next steps for staff. Staff have shown appreciation of that support and have found the feedback both helpful and challenging so far. The second area for improvement was to develop approaches to tracking and monitoring children's progress. Teachers and early years practitioners now meet termly with the senior leadership team to review attainment predictions and track progress for all learners. Teachers are now more able to make professional judgments with greater confidence and have shown an increased understanding of the need for a range of evidence to support this. With a continued focus on planning high quality learning and teaching, we aim to engage in moderation with our comparator schools and continue to work together to develop our approaches to learning and teaching and develop a robust assessment framework for the school. The third area for improvement is to ensure strategic leadership and development in the nursery. Alongside the early years team, I lead a well-planned calendar of professional development for our nursery team. With fortnightly planning and development sessions, we've already made good progress. We've focused on improving processes for planning and have increased staff understanding of the use of intentional and responsive planning, which is imperative to meet the needs of our youngest learners. Staff are positive about the changes made and are embracing the support being provided as a response to the feedback given by HMI. As with the school, quality assurance procedures are planned for and are beginning to have an impact on the practice in our nursery. Early years practitioners now have leadership roles in developing practice across the nursery in line with the quality indicators which we use to self-evaluate our practice. We are not losing sight of the number of strengths which were highlighted through the report, and we continue to ensure a nurturing and inclusive relationships permeate all the work that we do. I've observed the strong, effective teamwork amongst the staff and how this has impacted on how we work together. There's a real commitment from the team, and we're building on our approaches for children to lead their own learning and continue to provide a range of opportunities for our children to participate in wider experiences within the local community. I believe we're in a strong position to continue to improve outcomes for the children and young people of St Ninians Primary and improve outcomes for all of our learners. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Are there any questions, please? I don't think there are any questions. So again, if there are no questions, I just want to thank Sarah for that presentation and Gillian as well. And I will formally move the report. I will take a comment in a minute, Councillor Barrett. We'll formally move paper number 6, and I'll ask Councillor Carr if he can formally second it, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We'll move to comments, and the first one from Councillor Barrett, please. Carling, please then. Councillor Shires, can we have your comment, please? It might be a technical hitch. We'll maybe come back to Carling. Liz, can you go for your one, please, in the meantime?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to add my thanks to Sarah Cowmeadow and her team for the progress that's being made on the areas for improvement that have been recommended at St Ninians, and wish you all the best for the future in continuing this. And again, to thank Sharon Johnson and all who've been involved in producing this report, and the teams that have delivered these excellent results, showing that Perth and Kinross is again significantly outperforming comparative local authorities and the Scottish average. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Shires, are you with us yet? Okay, thank you. If Caroline's able to join us again before we finish, we'll bring her in. But I would just like to say also, to echo Councillor Barrett's comments, that we really appreciate the work that's been done since the inspection. I want to thank Councillor Frampton for going to the public meeting when I was unavailable. I know that Ellie was very impressed with what was presented, and I know that we're really confident that the nursery will get the strong leadership that it deserves, and that you'll build upon the strengths that were already identified in the HMI inspection, and we wish you all the best in that regard. Thank you. I don't think we have Councillor Shires, so with apologies to Councillor Shires, yeah, no problem. So with apologies to Councillor Shires, thanks very much everybody. I think we're done today. Much appreciated for attending, and like I say again, apologise, there was a little bit of confusion about the venue, but I think it has worked out to the best that we were here. So thanks very much everyone.